Today on Switch to Linux, we want to talk a little bit more about Google's app verification progress and why your mobile phone may kind of become a problem. Welcome back to Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, leave us a like in the comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. So we got to talk about mobile phones. Of course, it's kind of neat as I travel around the country. I'm traveling through a state right now that when smartphones first came out, this is kind of where I lived. And so I bought my first smartphone, and good old, I think it was, what is it? The Commando phone, I think it was. Really nice little phone. I think it was running, Android 2 or something at it. Not the very first year Android phones came out, but pretty close. And they had a lot of neat elements to it. You know, you could have put a pedometer on there. You had a big phone, you had games, and all sorts of neat stuff. It's kind of interesting. And of course, that phone lived its life I had it for about maybe 2 years or so. And then I wanted to get the Commando 2. And that's really when Google got all of their googliness involved in it and started doing all sorts of weird stuff. That's like, no, it felt like this was not my machine. It felt like it was someone else's machine. So I actually took that phone back and switched to the iPhones for a while. And if you're not going to modify your phone, if you're going to use it out of the box with its stock custom OS, I actually think Apple is probably a little bit better than Google. Neither one of them is amazing, but I think if you're not going to modify it. Now, I heavily modify all my phones. I'm currently running a Graphene OS on this Pixel 5a. I actually do have my Pixel 6 out here as well, also running Graphene OS. This one is actually my Starlink control phone. I have one dedicated phone to Starlink because I have to have the Google Play services on that phone sandboxed. My backup phone, which is down here, is, can I get to it easily? Yeah, there it is. This is the Razer Phone 2. This one still works great. That one is running Lineage OS. And so I heavily modify my phones, and I keep Google Play services off of my phones because I just don't like the things that Google does. And that really is the way one should run a phone should you want privacy. Now, I also, though, am a very, very strong advocate. You should not be doing things on your phone that are not any more than basic communication or just some simple basic things. You do not want your whole life tied to this one device because that produces a very easy situation. Number one, it can be lost or stolen. There were some reports about maybe a year or so ago, it's probably still going, just not news anymore, where there would be guys roaming the streets in like motor scooters or something, snatching phones out of people's hands as they had them on, so they could snatch the phone right out of your hand. Now it's already unlocked. They could go ahead and unlock it the rest of the way and do a bunch of malicious stuff with it, transfer funds to other things using the NFC technology most people are using. There were a lot of issues with that. Not to mention the fact that malware gets in there, not to mention the fact that they are tremendous spies. All of these different apps that you install all have ad trackers. They're all being sold to data brokers who literally use that data against you to either market you, target you, or sell your location and gyroscopic data to your insurance company, who then jacks up your rates, particularly if you go on roller coasters. Real story, look it up. Yeah, somebody's rates went up because his phone thought he was driving erratically because he was riding on a roller coaster. That phone data was sold to LexisNexis through Allstate's data broker system, and then the insurance company used that data to say, you're an erratic driver. I'm going to charge you a lot more for your car rates. That type of stuff is how your phone is used against you. Now, using Graphene OS, I route almost all internet traffic through the Tor network on this device as it is. So any background application data that might go anywhere is obfuscated through the Tor network, although I run entirely open source apps on my phone, and I run the very minimum amount. I mean, just giving you a very brief detour. Let me just open it up and see what I have on the particular phone. I use maps. I use offline maps, and I'm testing around organic maps. And I also have OSM, which is the primary one. I have my Bible study notes is over there. I have web browsers. I have an RSS feed, which is what I use to compile our news. I do have a stock ticker on there that I got from F-Droid, and that just kind of gives me what the stock market's doing at a quick glance. And other than that, I have Nextcloud in there, which allows me to sync some stuff between this and my own private Nextcloud server. So, photos I snap are going automatically up to Google. We have notes, and I have an email application here that's K9 Mail. I think it's now Thunderbird for Android. I think it's the new version. And really looking at all of that, that's not a lot of stuff on here. If I need to get on how do you check the weather on your phone? It is actually quite easy to check the weather on my phone. What I end up doing with that is I just have over here a Firefox Focus that just says weather, and I push the button, and all it does is it goes right to the weather channel and shows me the weather. And of course, I'm in the back remote area of Wyoming, so I don't have signal on that. Thanks, Starlink, for the internet to record this video. All right. For whatever reason, my internet is showing as no internet, but that's something on the phone. Let me double check that. All right. Anyway, with all of that being said, what I wanted to mention here is what Google is doing to, what they're doing to look at the impact of sideloading. So they want to start verifying all Android apps starting next, I think they're starting to slowly roll out next year, and the goal is by 2027 to roll this out in the whole world. What this means is that any Android application going on any phone that utilizes the Google Play services, which is most phones in the world that do not have custom ROMs on it, and phones in China. Phones in China and phones with a custom ROM are generally exempt. Now, what this means is that they're not removing the ability to sideload. You see, they're very, very careful in the nonsense they're pushing because it's going to completely confuse all of those politicians out there. They're going, well, they're not doing anything wrong. I mean, come on, you can still sideload all the applications you want. The problem is they want to make it so any app, whether it comes from the official Google Play Store, any random Play Store, or simply sideloaded anywhere on the internet, the app developers must verify themselves with Google, which includes sending them a copy of your ID. We'll actually get to that in a moment. So what they're doing here is they're trying to say that they say down here, Google claims apps sideloaded from outside the store are 50 times more likely to contain malware. And because of this, they want to verify all of these apps. Okay, we're going to come back to that claim in a moment. What we want to do is I want to start with F-Droid's Responds. Now, F-Droid is where I get my applications. Now, F-Droid and actually the Graphene OS developer down here, they actually take some hits against F-Droid. I don't know. There have been some people in the past who have said the Graphene OS developer is a little unhinged. And I don't know, this may be part of it because rather than helping to support, he's going out swinging and, we're more superior, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. We'll kind of set that aside, and we want to read what his response is in a moment. But F-Droid responds to this, and the thing about F-Droid is they're not like Aurora or many of the alternatives to the Google Play Store, which package or basically distribute an APK file. The APK file is your Android application file. This is what is used to install the app on your particular computer. All right, so all of these places, and the reason I don't like most of those stores is I don't know where they're sourcing these from. Are they grabbing them? Are people compiling themselves and then submitting them? I just don't know the source of it. The reason I like F-Droid is for an application beyond F-Droid, the source code must be available for them to review. They download the source code themselves and audit the code to make sure there's nothing in there like the anti-features. They want to verify there's nothing crazy there. And then F-Droid compiles it themselves and verifies that it does what it's doing, and then it distributes those APKs to you, which means it takes a lot of extra steps. Now, this does limit out. There's a lot of apps that you might find other places like Aurora Store or many of the other APK source stores. But the reason you don't find a lot of those is the source code's not available, or they have a lot of weird anti-features, or they weren't able to verify the thing does what it's supposed to do without any weird background connections or talking or things like that. Now, where Graphene is saying they're doing something wrong is by publishing them under the original developer's ID and not the ID of F-Droid. And we'll get into that in a minute when we discuss what Graphene OS has to say. But it says here, contrast to the commercial app stores, of which Google Play is the most prominent, the differences are stark. They're hotbeds of spyware and scams, blatantly promoting apps that prey on their users through attempts to monetize their attention and mine their intimate information through any means necessary. Okay, I was going to do things in a little bit different order, but let's go ahead and dive into this real quick, and then we're going to come back to the F-Droid article. So this is Android Police. They actually released this back in May, where Google throws out its number saying the Google Play Store are 50 times more likely to contain malware from apps than apps from the Play Store. No information, no data. This is just a talking point they go out. And since journalism apparently is dead in America, nobody has verified this. I have tried to find out any information where this comes from. I cannot find a single study or anything. This leads us to a couple questions. The question number one is, are we talking about raw number of random APKs downloaded from the internet, or are we talking about device installs? And that's a different number, because somebody might have 7,000 random APKs on some website somewhere that 3 people have ever looked at. Are those 30,000 or whatever APKs really a threat? No. Nobody knows they're there. Nobody's going to go to some weird shady site and download them. Now, they might be there for repositories for droppers or things like that, and that's very likely. That is a possibility. So, of course, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. I looked at securitybriefing.net. These guys are simply shells, and they are apparently lack cognition as well. We'll get into why in just a moment. This here is an article, The Hidden Risks of Sideloading and Why You Stick to the Official App Stores. Note, this is only about a month after they did this. Notice the progression here. Now, this security briefing is by their own About Us page. What this basically is just the first and largest community of chief information security officers. So basically, it's a whole bunch of people from all the big top companies, effectively. So it's effectively a propaganda arm to push out articles so that people can cite them in order to say it. So, of course, what they're doing is they're pushing out the same basic talking points. Google Play Store and Apple App Store serve as curated ecosystems. Both the companies beyond these stores have invested heavily in monitoring, reviewing, and scanning applications for malicious behavior. All right, so they want to go in and talk about Agent Smith malware as their example about the dangers of sideloading. I'm like, that's curious. Let's see what Agent Smith has to say. Oh, wow, that article there. I have no idea why that's pulling in so small. There you go. That's better. All right. So I didn't want to dig into the whole thing. Of course, Agent Smith was an application. You would install it, and then this was discovered in 2019, and it would search your phone for common applications, and it would install malicious versions of them. Now, this pretty much does not impact modern Android because the verification keys will be different and Android will stop it. But this was kind of a novel attack back in 2019. But notice this point highlighted. Checkpoint has worked closely with Google at the time of publishing, and no malicious apps remain on the Play Store. Oh, so they were there. Well, there weren't a lot. There were, I think it was 11 was the number. It's way down at the bottom. You got to scroll down to the bottom of the article. During our extended threat hunting, we uncovered 11 apps on the Google Play Store that contain malicious yet dormant SDKs related to Agent Smith Actor. Discovery indicates the actor's ambition in expanding operations into Google Play Store, with previous success experimenting from the main Agent Smith campaign. Now, this is a campaign that targeted mostly India. 59% of the infections were from India, and it was, I don't know, like India at that time, you have to understand, in 2019, India at the time did not have Google Play services installed on most phones. And so what we saw in that circumstance is India had to use shady third-party app stores to download random APKs from the internet. And in so doing, they would download Agent Smith, which would then look for these other apps. And the list is actually up here. It would look for these other apps. And if it found them, so WhatsApp, there's a Lenovo GPS system, there's video players. So it's just a number of little apps which were common around that time. And then if it found any of those, it would install a malicious version of these apps over top of it. So that's kind of where these guys are going to. And of course, installing an app from the unofficial source means you're likely surrendering control over your personal information. Is that true or not? Well, it kind of depends. We'll kind of get into that in a minute here too. Apps may be geo-restricted. This is why people might want to install something from third parties. Geo-restricted, unavailable due to policy violations, or offered with premium features unlocked. Always remain skeptical of links on social media, emails, or messaging platforms, especially as encouraging you to download an app from unfamiliar websites. And yeah, this is true. I am not a strong advocate of going to a random website and downloading an APK. Okay. And frankly, there's nothing I can do about stupid. If you're going to do that, there's nothing that's going to help you, not even Google. But I wanted to dig in, these guys, like I said, they're just a coalition of these guys. And this is the evidence that they seem to not be mentally sound. Google Play, you have to read this paragraph a couple times and go, wait, what? Google Play Store is not a safe place for your Android phone. I've been telling you that for a long time. And this article, by the way, is 2022. A recent report revealed that hackers infected at least 12 apps on the store with malware, which can steal personal information and cause a lot of damage to your device or data if installed. From the Google Play Store menu. So before downloading anything else, make sure it's from an official source like Google. Google Play is not safe. At least 12 apps had malware, which can steal your information. So install an official app, like from Google. Okay. Yeah, like I said, these guys are a little bit unhinged. But of course, you think about the apps you find on the Google Play Store, and I kind of think of Neon. We talked about this in the news this last week. Neon is an app that pays users to record their phone calls and then sells the data for AI training. Now, the good news is, the bad news is, as soon as this app was released out, it reached the #2 in Apple's App Store, and it did go pretty high on Google's, I think. I can't remember exactly how high that went. But this is a major app, verified through all their verifications, which ended up in 1 week exposing everybody's personal information, the recordings of the phone calls. Hey, at least the good news about this app is that it was actually literally only recording the side of the conversation that had the app installed. That was actually pretty good. The malicious backdoor allowing you to download stuff only downloaded half of the conversation, the half that came from the particular app. But it did download all of the meta information, the calling details. It was able to provide the transcripts. You were able to get a lot of personal information from the users based on this app. Well, this was from the official app stores, yet it leaked out all of this data. It leaked out metadata, information about who you're talking to, actual transcripts of your phone conversations, despite this passing all verification on Google and Apple. They don't really care. Do I remind you about the T app? This one came out, and of course there was the T app came out, and the T app ended up having a data breach which revealed users' driver's licenses, direct messages, selfies, and other sensitive information. Well, this is actually interesting because Google, in addition to demanding payment of a registration fee and agreement to their non-negotiated and ever-changing terms and conditions, Google also requires uploading of personally identifiable documents, including government IDs. Like, those you just stole out of the T app. So when you do something malicious, it doesn't matter. Google, get this through your ever-loving thick heads, okay? If you're going to require a person to provide a government ID and they're already breaking the law, they're just going to upload somebody else's ID. And then when you turn them over to the FBI, then some poor family who happen to have their data leaked on T or one of 1,700,000 other applications, which are all now collecting IDs so we can all verify everything on the internet, they're just going to kick in the door of some innocent person who has no idea why you're there, but you're still pointing a whole lot of machine guns in their face because of some stupid no-knock warrant because they think you're a crazy criminal and you're just having tea on your back porch. Yeah. So all of these apps now want our IDs. They all want to get it all up there, and we know how secure they are. A T, that was secure. Of course, there was the T for men, of course, which leaked the same exact information. It's probably the same exact application. Talk about stupid reading stupid, you know? And then you get the Neon app, and then you get all these apps that leak all this data. And then, hey, wouldn't you know it, that driver's license are one of the top things people sell online? Why? Because everyone wants to verify your ID. It's really convenient if you can just, steal somebody. You're going to commit wrong anyway. It's kind of like establishing these gun-free zones. You got to think back to it, right? That person in Nashville, they looked at 5 other schools. They went to the one that was a gun-free zone. Go figure, Why'd that happen? I don't know. Making something illegal is not going to stop somebody that doesn't care about the law. And so Google's kind of doing the same thing. So how safe is the Google Play Store? Well, just released just about 3 weeks ago, 224 malicious apps managed to bypass the Play Store's anti-malware checks. Yeah, look at that. Now, this kind of gets back to that first question. Are those 50,000 apps, are they 50,000 just individual little tiny apps that nobody's ever heard of? Or are they 3 apps or 11 apps or 12 apps or 224 apps that get through, that get promoted by the algorithm in Google, and then now they just get mass installed everywhere because there's so much hype around them and the algorithm pushes them to the top. And now you have 50 million installs or more of malware from these 224 versus, maybe 4 from the 30,000 APKs that 3 people have ever seen. And all 3 of them looked at that last, go, why did I download something from here? So it begs that question, why are they doing this? It's more about control than anything else, but they're not going to solve the problem because the malicious actors are still going to be malicious actors. They're just going to use the IDs that they've downloaded from T. Sorry, T users. Let's go ahead and have a look at what F-Droid is going to say further. So it distributes apps that have been validated to work for the user's interests rather than the interests of the app's developers. The way F-Droid works is simple. When the developer creates an app and hosts the source code publicly somewhere, the F-Droid team reviews it, inspecting it to ensure that it is completely open source and contains no undocumented anti-features such as advertisements or trackers. Once it passes it, they will compile it. The package is then signed with either F-Droid's cryptic key or, if the build is reproducible, enables distribution through the original developer's private key. Now, Google seeking to change this. Android developers everywhere around the world are going to be required to register centrally with Google. In addition to demanding payment or registration fee and agreement to their non-negotiable, ever-changing terms and conditions, Google will also require uploading of personally identifiable documents, including, stolen government IDs. Because criminals are going to criminal. All right. The F-Droid project cannot require the developers register their apps through Google, but at the same time, we cannot take over the application identifiers for the open source apps we distribute, as that would effectively seize exclusive distribution rights for those applications. So in other words, if you download, for example, VLC, the app identification of VLC on the Google Play Store would be similar to what you would get if you were to download an APK or something from F-Droid. Now, that is the point that Graphene OS says is the problem. Let's just dive into what Graphene OS has to say. And this is just a thread discovering this. And this is where Graphene OS developers takes a hit against F-Droid. So part of this, verification part will not be part of Google. Hold on. Let me, instead of reading that, let me just explain. This side loading restriction only applies on your phone if your phone has Google Play services. So if you have a phone without Google Play services, you can still sideload applications. All right. It's just if your phone has the Google Play system on it. So this means any lineage build where you're not also installing the G apps, you can sideload applications from anywhere. It doesn't matter. Now, Graphene OS, they have a sandbox version of the Google Play Store, and some users have questioned, how does that work? And Graphene OS seems to suggest that, yes, you can still download apps from the Google Play Store inside that sandbox, but you can also still sideload because that is so sandboxed that the whole core of the system doesn't see the Google apps, which means you can sideload anything on your Graphene OS phone, or you can do Google verified apps through the Play Store in the sandbox mode. Now, when you're developing an application, where they're going to go at here and they take the swipe at F-Droid is because F-Droid publishes all of the applications under the application's original name, which if you've ever looked at an application for Android, the raw names, it is in reverse order. So the application name, the domain name, and the TLD in reverse order. So what that would mean is if it's VLC at VLAN.com, then the app would be called com.vlan.vlc. And so F-Droid, what GrapheneOS argues F-Droid should do is rename all of their applications utilizing their key, which would allow them to verify themselves through Google and allow the applications. That's that's GrapheneOS's argument to F-Droid. And they say they brought this up many times, but F-Droid doesn't care. So what F-Droid does is they distribute the applications under the original developer's name. Now, this is good in that there's no confusion about where it comes from. It's bad in that it can override or look like a not an official build if you have the same application coming from the Google Play Store. So if you're doing Google Play Store and F-Droid on the same phone, installing similar apps, you might have some conflict over the applications in which case is going on. So here is, we'll start down here with what the GrapheneOS developers say. F-Droid was never supposed to be using the package names belonging to the upstream projects. They were supposed to be prefixing them with org F-Droid if it lacked authorization using such a suffix as F-Droid at the end of the developer authorized it and preferred it to be done that way. It was never meant to be the case that people were distributing builds using an ID belonging to others. Those are supposed to be unique to each variant of the app, including builds signed with different keys. So this is really what they're saying. It seems more like a swipe against F-Droid than anything constructive, in my opinion. And I've read it a few times to see if I can understand it. But that really is what the crux of their argument is. And the challenge is, going back to what F-Droid has to say, is we cannot rename them differently because we are not the creators of these individual applications, and we are not going to be able to register those. So they actually say down here, let's see. Yeah, they can't take over the application identifiers for the open source apps we distribute. That would effectively seize exclusion distribution rights for those applications. F-Droid's myriad users will be left adrift with no means to install or even update their existing installed applications. And they go on to say they do not know how many people use F-Droid because they do not keep statistics. And that's really good. Now, ultimately, this came about when this came out. The journals, I think, in Ars Technica were saying F-Droid is now concerned about this. Now, the real question here is how many people are using F-Droid that also have Google Play services versus how many are using it. In other words, is this change really going to change F-Droid's market? Honestly, I don't know. But if they notice a sharp decline in donations because people can no longer use their applications, that would cause a serious problem. Now, I will also point out that the way they're distributing it, if they are indeed using the signing keys of their developers and their developers are verified with Google, those applications will still be able to be installed on any Google phone utilizing the Google Play services. And it's just those that are not, or that are signed with F-Droid's key instead. And that is what's going to stop it, because basically they said, we're not agreeing to Google's terms here. So this is where we get into some of the security stuff. While directly installing or sideloading can be construed as carrying some inherent risk, it's false to claim that centralized app stores are only for the safe option. Like, you know, these 224 malicious apps able to bypass the anti-malware checks just 3 weeks ago. And not to mention all of the other ones that we repeatedly see. F-Droid offers a trustworthy and transparent alternative approach to security. Every app is free and open source. The code can be audited by anyone. The build process and logs are public, and the reproducible builds ensure what is published matches the source code exactly. That is what you do not get with anybody else, and this is why I trust F-Droid above every other source, including the Google Play Store. Because Google seems to let whatever in there. Hey, you're going to make us money? Oh, yeah, we're going to make it through. Yeah, there we go. F-Droid's like, no, we're going to look and audit the code. We're going to have transparency. So Google's framing that they need to mandate developer registrations in order to defend against malware is disingenuous because they already have remediation mechanism. That is the Google Play Protect service that is enabled on all Android certified devices and already scans and disables apps that have been identified as malware. Now you can turn that feature off, but that is a good alternative approach to make sure it's all there. All that's going on here is that Google simply does not want anybody installing things that do not go through them first. And that's a problem. They say down here, we do not believe developer registration is motivated by security. We believe it's about consolidating power and tightening control over the formerly open ecosystem. And I completely agree with that particular sentiment. But again, remember, the criminals are going to criminal. They're just going to be using stolen IDs. It's one of the fastest growing markets on the dark web. These markets are available. All sorts of problems are coming from this. These are serious problems. All right. And it is simply just getting worse. Now, this down here is where I kind of believe this is my computer. I should be able to do with it what I want. If I'm going to be stupid with it, that's fine. So forcing software creators into centralized registration scheme in order to publish and distribute their works as egregious as forcing writers and artists to register with a central authority in order to be able to distribute their creative works. That's kind of like record labeling and things like that. This is something that Amazon has solved in a way that people can bring books to the market a whole lot better than they have in the past. But they do say up here under that right to run, if you own a computer, you shall have the right to run whatever programs on it you want, whether this is a phone or a computer. So what do we propose? They are proposing contacting your regulators. That might be a better short-term fix right now. We definitely need a change in our zeitgeist, allowing us to have more control over our own computers and whatnot. But ultimately, my general proposal is we gotta first stop using our phone for everything under the sun and start treating this thing like the data harvester and the spy that it is. Utilize this thing for your basic communication and simple tasks throughout the day. Simplify things without giving it too much access to too many things. Ultimately, though, the forcing the creators to use these, all this is going to do is increase cybercrime in other areas, and the same type of stuff is going to continue to happen. We're going to get to the point where small developers with honest, legitimate sources will actually be locked out of doing a lot of these things. Meanwhile, the malicious actors, they're going to have the money from all the previous scams they've run to push through all these things, utilize the fake IDs, get themselves to the top of it, and we're just going to have Google Play stores just going to continue to be infected, but they'll all be verified developers. Kind of like the video I did a few weeks back. I forgot to pull it up here, but I did a video a few weeks back looking at that VPN extension that was like number one or something, or at least it was a featured or recommended application on Chrome's extension app. It was one of those free VPNs. It might have been called Free VPN or something like that. And they basically were caught collecting and utilizing a bunch of data, but I had made the argument in that I believe the exact same developer behind that is also the developer behind two new ones, which are probably based on the same code, both owned by the same company, probably owned by that original company. I made the argument for that possibility. And once again, they are up there on the Google Chrome extension store as featured or recommended extensions. And that is something to be aware of. I honestly think it's the same person based on the things I've seen. That's my opinion. But it'd be definitely interesting to dig in a little bit deeper. Ultimately, though, we have to come to this realization that these devices are our devices. We need a system that the novice person's not going to be able to accidentally sideload some malicious app somewhere. But we need a way that if I want to and I'm willing to accept the risks and it takes a few extra steps, I should be able to do that. It might be something like going through and same thing you do for turning on USB debugging. Go down to your system build, press it several times, push your application in there, get into the developer options and enable the ability to sideload an app regardless of what Google Play Store wants. I'm okay with something as complicated as that because it's something we can turn on. It's something you're not going to accidentally do. Now, how do you get around the social media or the social hackers, which tell you that to do this, you got to walk through that step? Well, we just got to not be as stupid. That's what it boils down to. Just not be as stupid. And so the fact of the matter is, this is my device. I paid a lot of money for it. I should be able to do with it what I want. And I can audit and make sure that F-Droid is a very legitimate source. I do not want Google to take away F-Droid from me. Even if I am using a stock phone, I still want to be able to sideload any app that I want and allow me to take on the risk and the responsibility. And again, just like Apple, I think Apple should do the same thing. I'm not saying it should be easy. I'm saying it should be technically possible without doing anything dangerous to your phone. Okay, it should be something buried inside of a deep configuration menu. I love the idea of turning it on just like turning on USB sideloading. Nobody's going to accidentally do that. They're either going to know what they're doing on the phone, or they're going to be coerced by a social engineer hacker, and there's not much you can do about that except fix stupid, and good luck with that. So there are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on all this situation in the comments down below.